TNKR Media.
Jesus Christ, we're never going to get a podcast done today.
Yes, we will. You'll see. We'll go right through it fast.
Yeah, let's not talk about the politics.
All right.
Elbows up, Lesley.
Okay. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Salt Lick Podcast. I'm Lesley Chesterman, and here with my co-host, David McMillan. We decided to add a little bonus episode because David and I are both on the road this week. That's why you'll notice the sound is a little bit off. But we had this great conversation we want to share. So we talk about lobsters, the difference between different lobsters in different areas. French lobster, is it better or not? We talk about oyster bacteria, what's going on with that. David has a lot of opinions as usual. We talk about a lot of great spring mushrooms that are coming up and about the famous false morel, the gyromitre that you really shouldn't be eating. So we talk about that as well. And should you overcook your peas? I mean, I am in the camp of undercooked peas or really bright green peas, and David's telling us why we should maybe cook our peas a little longer. For all of you who enjoy the podcast, we're going to be putting up some pictures on our new Instagram site, which is Salt Lick Podcast on Instagram. And if you have any comments or questions, you can email us at saltlickpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to answer your questions, and we'd love to read some very positive comments. And finally, I did want to point out that if you'll see a rating sign on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, we'd really appreciate a 5-star review. And really, because it's an amazing way for people to find the podcast and listen to all these fun conversations. So enjoy this little extra bonus episode about spring ingredients, and please don't eat those false morels.
It's a pleasure to see you. And I want to know about, you went to Quebec City on the train. You went to the Table Ronde Chefs Conference. It's like, I guess, an organization. It's a new thing, a couple of years old. Please enlighten me.
Well, I found out a few things. First of all, I just found out today that it's kind of high-end Montreal and Quebec. The whole province of Quebec restaurants are invited to get together. And originally, the idea was to get together to try to source ingredients in a number that would be high enough for them to get a better price on them and actually access and transportation. And, you know, Quebec chefs, and I'm sure all chefs, are just obsessed with acquiring ingredients. And, you know, people might not know if they're listening from outside the province, but Quebec is a huge province. So trying to get fish from Gaspésie takes twice as long as if you're getting fish from New York, right? So a lot of these people want to try it, but you know, I'm talking about that, but really what this association about is getting chefs together. So all these chefs were together, and they had a lot of topics. I was there to talk about being a restaurant critic, so we were talking about restaurant critics versus influencers, or just the reality of today. And there were all kinds of meetings, kind of, you know, how to handle stress, and how to create a brand, and how to use Open Table, because Open Table is one of the sponsors.
Yeah, they're having a big resurgence, it seems. They seem to be having a second win. I've noticed a lot of restaurants are switching back to Open Table from Resi now. It seems to be a thing.
Well, Open Table has quite a presence now, and they were certainly one of the big sponsors there. I think there were 5 people at my table at lunch. And you know, there are other there was a big talk about game meat, which I think we're going to talk about at an upcoming podcast, and a big talk about seal, that more people should be eating seal. I am not a fan of seal, and I feel that it's sacrilegious that I'm saying that.
So I always bring that up, it seems. I've had it, I've cooked it, it'll never take off. It's just not a thing. It's like if a liver swam in the ocean and ate fish. I don't love it. To be honest, there's one product that should be served on Quebec restaurant tables, and it's simply deer. You know, the province is crawling with it. Down here, it's basically a problem, right? We could easily organize with hunting and fishing and game.
You know, it's hard because there was this kind of push that chefs wanted to serve game meats, and certainly in places like France and England, you can serve game meats. Here in Canada, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, you can there is a commercial hunt, and you can serve moose in your restaurant and Arctic hare, and I just don't know a lot of these things if they're listing them off. If they're really things that people that chefs want to put on their menus. And the idea here is that we'll have, a real local feeling for our food. But is even eating beaver the local feeling for, is that really what restaurants should be doing to stick out from the crowd?
I don't think that that's what puts what you call asses in seats. And I don't see anybody traveling here to have that. I do, though, support commercial deer hunt, even if it was once a year in the fall, that a number of animals were identified for restaurants that filled out an application to maybe get one or two. Like restaurants today get bluefin tuna. Bluefin tuna wasn't really a thing 10 years ago in the restaurant business. Now it's like we have a thing. It's like a bluefin tuna season. There's a Quebec catch. The Gaspé fishermen go out and a few fish make it to the city. I think Normand was one of the pioneers to bring a tuna into the city and break it down and split it amongst the 4 or 5 restaurants. I know that I've bought some tuna from Normand in my career in the past. I know that Martin Picard from Peter Cochon as well that did some good work bringing in whole fish, and it would be arduous. It was communication with the fishermen, talking to the fishermen in the middle of the night. We're coming in, we got one. And then Martin or Normand dispatching a refrigerated truck to Gaspé, long drive, 9 hours, around 10, 11 sometimes, bringing it back and breaking the fish down. And then, selling. If it's a big fish, they can be, several 100 pounds sometimes. And then cutting it into pieces and dispatching it, to different restaurants. I felt that was always a good effort. I feel that, a few deer, when I say a few, I mean 200 for a test audience, could be dispatched between Montreal and Quebec City, and with special butchers, and we could all buy some deer meat. I think that would be a great thing and a yearly tradition. I also support something that we don't talk about so much, but there's a lot of species of fish in the St. Lawrence that are underused, that we're not using so much, right? So a little bit more of that, and I'd say more care in the fishing, right? Catching the fish, putting it, like the way you kill the fish, the way that you pack the fish, and the way that you dispatch the fish. We have, when you look how the Japanese do it, or some Asian countries, fish, and let's say how we do it, we're just basically shoveling fish like coal into bins and throwing them in the back of a truck, and not really, spending so much attention on like getting something unbelievable to the market, right? We just kind of, you look at mackerel, for example. Our mackerel is possibly pretty good, but the way we catch it and the way we throw it in bins, 60 pounds deep or 100 pounds deep, if not more, right? And ship it sometimes still belly full, with no real traceability of where it was caught, the time, how many hours it was in the truck, so on. These are problematic things, right? So, look at the Japanese mackerel would be, killed one by one via acupuncture, ikijimi, and packed in smaller recipients, not piled on top of each other, and sent to the market, fairly quickly, with information, the name of the fisherman, the boat that it was caught on, the body of water, the port that it came through, to follow through on basically a story for us, or for the chefs that work in restaurants. I just hate, like, this is Quebec mackerel, the end. I need to know more, right? Where was the mackerel from? What bay was it caught in? What was the boat? What time was it caught at? Explain to me that body of water, so chefs can educate their staff on creating a backstory about these things, and then creating a special worth and understanding, like, that some mackerel is better than others. Maybe Newfoundland mackerel is better than Nova Scotia mackerel. It's I get miffed sometimes, and I'll rant just for 30 seconds quickly on this. Sometimes people say, "Oh, le homard du Québec." I'm like, come on, are you really going to go there? We only serve le homard du Québec. When did fine food become nationalistic? What Omardus americanus is, the lobster that we have on the East Coast. The fishing ground is not big. Basically it goes from the south shore of Newfoundland to a little bit north of Boston, right? That body of water, it's a little circle, right? It's the coast of Maine, uh, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, a little bit in Quebec, of course, and that's it. There's none south of Boston, right? And there's none north of St. John, right? So when we talk about, Omar, like Quebec lobster, is better than American. That's insane, right? There's underground, there's underwater geopolitical borders that designate that a lobster from the USA, from Maine, is less good than a lobster from Prince Edward Island. You see what I'm saying? That's also funny.
I knew a chef in Halifax who was so obsessed with which was the best lobster that he said he wanted, because of course you meet anybody from Newfoundland, they'll say deeper water in Newfoundland, colder water, they're the best. And then you talk to anybody from Nova Scotia and they'll look at you like you're crazy. And then the Gaspésie people will tell you theirs is the best. And then, other people are like, everybody knows it's the Ile de la Madeleine lobster. And then the Maine people are like, well, of course ours is the best. And then this came up at the conference, and somebody saying, "Well, all the Maine lobster is kind of muddy based. It's got more of a muddy flavor."
Not true. It's absolute. Like it's a. Let me tell you a comparison to crush that somewhat. It's specific, first of all, bay to bay, from my fishing license to your fishing license, and we're neighbors, right? The water bottom is complex. It changes like geography changes when we drive in the Laurentians, when we drive on any road. It's a very, very much, kilometer by kilometer topography of ocean floors. Some is muddy, some is rocky, some is deep, some is colder, some is warmer. Some is ragged, some is jagged, rocks. It's very, very specific. So my analogy, my comparison to that is, all oysters from Prince Edward Island are called Malpec. So for 300 years, we would eat Malpec oysters. And I remember back in the day, they were, you'd go to the fish market and it was a standard box, like PEI potatoes. You would have as a standard sack, right? Everybody had the same sack. It said PEI potatoes. And all the oyster boxes had this blue logo on them with a Prince Edward Island on them. And all oysters were Malpec oysters. And I loved that. Malpec oysters. Great, great name. Great. Then, later on, all of a sudden there was raspberry point. I was like, okay, whatever. Congratulations, on marketing a new Malpec oyster, but it's in fact a Malpec oyster. The same plant, okay, that packs raspberry points, when they've done 20 skids of raspberry points, well, then they start packing the exact same oysters in another box called pickle point. It's a second SKU for them, right? So it's on and on and on. Now, basically, Prince Edward Island is covered. There's 100 different specific oysters, but the thing is they're all Malpec, right? Now, some people, we've seen changes in aquaculture and oyster culture. There's a lot less bottom oysters now were basically, wild-ish oysters that were seeded in bays, and then they were harvested with tongs in boats. Now today we have like floating, multi-layered nets where that's why the oyster looks more uniform, right? It's basically aquaculture. Kids have now gone to university and studied aquaculture and come back and plan their specific oyster leases and these floating farms, and they can basically make a prediction of how many oysters they will have in the fall to be able to make a financial prediction, right? As opposed to just going out in the bays and tonging oysters all day long.
Another topic that came up at this forum was oysters, and people were talking about there's a bacteria in the oysters, and so
Vibrio
topic, yeah.
So Vibrio has been around, for a while. It's a problem, as water warms up. Listen, the greatest oysters in the world will always be from the coldest waters, and they're the slowest growing oysters. So by default, the oysters of Cape Breton and the oysters of Prince Edward Island, and even some of the northern Maine oysters are some of the most terrific oysters in the world. They're cold water oysters. They're very slow growing. A commercial sized oyster is probably 5 years old sometimes, Uh, so they're absolutely fantastic. As water warms up, we're going to see things like red tide, right? And then we're going to see things like, Vibrio, and there's other, diseases as well. And Prince Edward Island and Maine and New Brunswick are now also fighting with an invasive species like the little green Portuguese crab that came to, Canadian shores and ballast of boats. And that's been somewhat of a little problem. It's a small, inedible green crab that, you know, proliferates quickly and is not commercially delicious. It's not good to make soup with. It's not big enough to eat. It's just a pest, right? So yeah, Vibrio is something to consider. I also say this all the time: the permission of allowing a restaurant to introduce a raw product into your body
Hmm.
is something that should never be taken lightly. Okay. When you go to a restaurant and you pay good money, it's kind of the smartest guy in the restaurant should be in charge of the raw seafood program. Not the newest youngest hire, the freshest kid out of cooking school, or the kid you hired at the bar last
Yeah.
week. It's an
Yeah.
it's a huge responsibility to, look at how seriously the pharmacy takes advising you of, what cream to put on your, arm or cut, or, what vitamin you should, be putting into your body. There's a lot of attention and education to, the people that, introduce medications into you, medical doctors and pharmacists. But then you can go to a restaurant and you can have some raw. I've seen some horror stories on Instagram sometimes. I'm like, I feel like texting them and say, you can't serve that fish raw, you psycho. What are you doing? Right? No, but for real, I see like people like, oh, it's like cod, raw cod. I'm like, are you nuts? Like how, like, it's a 17-year-old chef doing a raw cod and orange juice carpaccio. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, they're going to kill someone.
Right. I hear the cod is full of worms.
Cod has this little worm, you can sometimes, in my experience of cooking cod, and I love cod, when you clean cod, there's a process of chandler to candle the cod, right? So when you've, boned it out and cleaned it out, you kind of look at the fillet over like a light bulb. It's a tiny little parasite that, is easily identifiable. The fish is still very healthy, very, delicious. You see it in basically every damn cod, or not every damn cod, but I've seen it often. And it's this healthy little thing, and you pick it out and it's over, right? I've seen that. I've seen horror. I've seen cancerous growths on swordfish that would make you
Ugh.
never eat it again, right? I've seen, in tuna loin, there's often a little parasite called sashi, which is kind of like a little white worm that bores its way from the collar, from the gills, all the way down the tuna loin to the tail. You can kind of, when you're cutting slices, you can see where it bored through. It's kind of like a gelatinous canal. We used to get striped bass. There's a period of the year where we order striped bass from the USA, and they come belly full with the tag, right? It's like American striped bass, gorgeous fish. They're beautiful. They're big. They're delicious to eat, but they often come belly full. Like they're not gutted, right? It's a fish that you can do that with. Some you can't, because some fish, when you catch them, they start automatically to, eat themselves, or the stomach acids start to demolish the internal system. So some fish have to be, cleaned and gutted immediately, and some don't. So striped bass is one of them that you can receive with a full belly. When we used to clean the striped bass, it was a sad state of pollution. So we'd have these majestic, 20-pound striped bass, peel them, scale them, lift the fillets, and of course you'd see this big belly sack, right?
Ugh.
But you'd notice like there's a lot of stuff in here. What's in here?
Like condoms.
No, not that bad, but yeah, maybe. Like I've not found one, but I bet one of my colleagues has. But we'd find often the tops of beer cans and soda cans, because they're shiny. And I guess when people are crushing beers or soda pops, they throw those things in the water, so they're shiny, and then the fish, I guess, bite them. So we noticed that there'd be a lot of the soda tops inside of the fish. There would also be like chip bag, like chip bag foil.
Yeah.
So we'd find pieces of like, Lay's chips bag and stuff like that. We'd also find, weights, like lead weights. So basically anything shiny we'd find inside the stomachs, as well as, baby squid and little crabs and the small fish, of course, right? But you would see like, yeah, these fish are ingesting things that men made, and that's unfortunate.
I really never knew that any fish were shipped without being cleaned and gutted and first. This is just something new. It's really
Yeah, there's actually quite a few fish that are like that, right? Not your big fish like tuna is always pretty clean, and swordfish and all that, but some what they call mullets. Some mullets are still full.
huh.
Um, Especially striped bass, I would say is the more prevalent one that see often that way.
I have a question for you about the lobster. I'm going backwards in the conversation, but I really have to ask you this. It's an opportunity. So we talked about all this lobster coming from the same area, but what about the blue lobster of France? Because that's another one that every French chef will tell you, "Oh, oui, monsieur, it's the best one." What's
Yeah, well, let's not like get into the French and how they think everything from the you know, and I
right, right,
love the French, and I'm a
right.
student of French bourgeois cuisine.
Yep.
And you listen, they've had centuries to specialize their food things. I'll never take anything away from them. They're amazing at bread, they're amazing at pastry, they're amazing at
Yep.
vegetables. They're not great at beef.
Right.
Very not good. Okay, so like let's give credit where credit is due.
Yep.
Canadian American beef better
Yep.
than French
Yep.
beef. So yes, I've had that lobster, the blue lobster. First of
Yep.
all, it's very cool because it's blue. Right, it's a very sexy lobster. It's also a more
Cooked. Is it still blue?
no. It'll turn but it won't turn like ours. It'll turn like a little bit
Purple?
browny orange. It's quite a little bit different. A North American lobster is very North American. Like Homartis americanus is, it's got its big crushing claw. They're surly. They're covered in barnacles. They're brown. They're tough.
Right.
They're the New World lobsters. Whereas the French lobster, and I would say there's also lobster in the UK. Same genus species. They're amazing. They're blue and they're delicious. But I would even say quite different. But in the way that a Fuji apple is different than an other than a what's that new hot apple that everybody
Well,
loves?
Honey Crisp?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So Fuji apple is quite good, but it's one degree of separation away from the Honeycrisp. So it's kind of like that, right? I think John, and I'd love to confirm this because I remember John from Lemaire. Lemaire is like one of our bigger fish shops, and John is the owner, and is now his boys run his fish shop. He sells to a lot of restaurants in Montreal and has been in the business for forever. But I remember John had like a couple of staff, and they used to screw around and do weird experiments in the back walk-in away from everybody's eyes, and they'd made like lobster. They bred lobsters, and the lobsters actually had baby lobsters in their lobster tank one year. I noticed, and John was like kind of showing me these baby lobsters that were basically born in Montreal, so you could say they're Montreal lobsters. Uh, but then he also had French lobsters one year. I guess he did special orders for some French people because they wanted to eat their lobster at Christmas and so on. And I believe the story goes that he put like a 1.5 pound North American Homartis americanus in a tank with a French lobster
Uh-oh.
in the same tank
Right.
to see what would happen. And if I remember correctly, legend would remind me that the American lobster tore the French lobster apart.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you get that, all the French people listening right now? The Canadian lobster one. Wow, that's something. But they are quite vicious, eh? Don't they? If you put them all in the tank, don't they all eventually eat each other? I mean, isn't that something that happens, or they start to, or they just diminish, their bodies start to.
Listen, if a lobster was, you know, the size of your pinky and you found it living under your pillow of your bed, you would have your house fumigated. And, it's a weird looking creature. Lobsters is, it's got a crushing claw. It's got that other claw, which is like a scissor. Uh, they grow like I love big, big, big lobsters, right? I don't love eating them.
Because they're super old, right? But are they? Is the flesh tougher? Is the taste better, or is it just all the same?
There's different schools of thought on that. And my favorite lobster is a 4 pound female. There's a lot of meat. There's a lot of roe. I like eating the red roe. What I also like in the 4 pound lobsters is a lot of cavity meat, which you won't really find in a 1.5, 2.5, 3 pound lobster. So, and that cavity meat is quite delicious. And then that also means you can kind of get a good amount of meat out of the little legs that are often not eaten anymore, that are basically used for stock or bisque or soup. How's this going? How are we turning this into the lobster show? Don't soak it in tomato sauce or curry, right? Anyway, I'm ranting. I have really strong feelings uh,
About lobster?
cooking
Right.
lobster. It's my favorite food.
It's kind of the same time that lobster and asparagus come out. And I am a real lover of those huge white asparagus. And that come from, I think, Belgium, or maybe they're from, I'm not too sure where they come from. They're not always from France. I think the ones we get here are brought in from Belgium. And they're so expensive. And I saw them at the market this weekend because we don't have any asparagus until end of May here. And the white asparagus, I mean the fat ones, I don't think we have those at all here yet. You can get white asparagus from Canada, from Quebec, but you're not getting those monster, beautiful ones that in Germany they go bonkers for.
Yeah, I
You
know.
like
I
those?
think there was.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love them. Like they're the best, and you have to overcook them, and very salty water or even chicken stock with a nice fat in it. They're just it's just a great vegetable. I also like giant green asparagus.
yeah. But when I was in Germany years ago, they really disdain the old green asparagus. It's all about the white asparagus. They're asparagus snobs basically. But you're right about the white asparagus, because if there's no way you can have it anyway al dente, they really have to be not mushy, but limit, like kind of not too far. But I also like green asparagus more cooked than most people. I don't like crunchy asparagus because it tastes like grass, and if you cook it a little more, it tastes like asparagus.
I feel that way about spinach too. Like I like cooking spinach to the beautiful green that it looks appetizing, but I worked in a restaurant in Burgundy, which was in a traditional old style restaurant. One of the first times I worked in France, and the chef used to cook us. They used to cook the spinach forever. Like I had it in a big pot on the corner of the stove, and he used to just let it rip for an hour.
What would you blanch it?
He told me it went that color that they say in French cooking, cacadois, like
Goose shit, yeah.
goose poop green. But he made an interesting point because I was like, this is that's not how we cook spinach anymore, chef. And he was like, yeah, of course you're going to say that, but let's cook their spinach your way, and I have my spinach, and then we're going to taste spinach together in 10 minutes. So I saute a little bit of spinach, butter, salt, pepper, a point of garlic, and my spinach is quite beautiful, right, to
Mm.
the eye. When you eat my spinach, it's good. It tastes like spinach, right, with salt and pepper and garlic. And but his spinach, in fact, wins. It's more delicious. I take a big spoonful of his super braised spinach. The iron flavor was gone. It felt more digestible. It just is something else.
You're telling us to cook the spinach longer. Give spinach a chance to cook longer.
There's a restaurant. Yeah, absolutely. You can overcook the spinach. It's not going to be as beautiful, but it's going to taste better. Right. Right.
The French also have a tendency to really cook the hell out of beans. Okay, like green beans, yellow beans. And years ago, I went to my ex-husband's parents' garden in the back of their house in Brittany, and his mother had a beautiful garden. They had these beautiful yellow beans, and I'm like, oh, look at the beans. And then at dinner, I've never seen beans cooked. They were like liquid beans. I don't think beans should be cooked to that point. They're crazy. I like beans a little bit al dente. That's the only one I'll go for.
I was looking on Instagram this week, and there's a chef Derek Damon, you from
For
famous
sure.
Derek Damon, great chef, and we send each other like sometimes pictures of things that we like, right? And I sent him a picture of I believe a plate of salmon or trout from this chef that I enjoy his cooking right now, or looking at his cooking, but Cafe Sicilia in London. It seems to be like fairly simplistic Italian food, but with he's got a great sensibility and sensitivity as well to his food. And Derek pointed out, I think it was just like a trout, and there was a little bit of squid in the sauce, but very little, just like pieces of like braised squid. And and I hadn't really, the sauce looked like a little bit of the color of soup au pois, pea soup. And then Derek says, like, to me, like, that guy's got strong balls to cook peas that long and make a sauce from it. And I go, what do you mean? And like, I didn't notice. So I went back and I looked at the picture, and it was, yeah, you should try this. I tried it last week, and I was kind of stunned by it. So basically, you fresh green peas, if that's a thing, right? Or frozen, boil the daylights out of them in water.
Water. Do
Okay.
you put do you put sugar or butter or anything when you cook peas?
Just chicken stock, a little bit of salt,
Okay.
but and then boil them, but then boil them more and then more. And then put your immersion little circulator in there, your little hand blender, and puree it. Maybe strain it out in the sieve and cook it more again. Okay. It's going to go from beautiful green to the worst green to a yellowish, weird green. But God, is it flavorful? It almost tastes like fresh soup au pois.
Uh-huh.
And then a little bit of that over a little piece of fish, scallops, a little
Mm.
piece of white fish. Unbelievable. Like,
So you're turning it.
really, just,
It's not a soup you're making. You're making a sauce.
yeah, it's a sauce, but it tastes like a soup. And often, really good sauce making is kind of that has its basis in soup making.
I'm gonna try that. So like triple cooked peas.
Yeah, just let them go till it's like an experiment gone wrong. But sometimes an experiment gone wrong tastes delicious.
Mm. Yeah.
I
So,
like that a
so
lot.
this is the season here for all these things. So we're talking about lobsters coming up. We talked about crab. We talked about, what's next. I'm thinking, well, we're a
The
long way.
asparagus, peas, now the rhubarb, and again, Derek was sending me some nice rhubarb mess things like this week. I don't, if I have a tablespoon of rhubarb every 3 years, I'm good. You?
I always liked eating rhubarb straight up with when you're little, when my parents had a huge rhubarb plant underneath the back porch, and then we just break it off and dare each other as kids to eat it with sugar, and we thought it was hilarious, and I loved that flavor of rhubarb. But rhubarb actually for a pastry chef is very finicky because it falls apart very quickly. You really can't cook it. In fact, one of the best ways to do poached rhubarb is just to cut it up raw and pour a hot sugar syrup on top and don't recook it. Just let it soften in the syrup because otherwise you're just gonna it turns into mush quite quickly.
I'm seeing these pies that have like rhubarb lattice work on them.
Oh yeah, for sure. But the Brits are huge on rhubarb. I don't know if the French are as big on rhubarb as it's really American, North American, British. They make rhubarb fool, rhubarb crumble.
It's Quebecois too, I would say. Does it fit into the French Canadian cooking?
Yeah, I think for sure. Yeah, I think it's kind of a North American thing, certainly. But yeah, I like rhubarb in
So
cocktails.
you'd think lobster and rhubarb would be a thing that makes sense cooking wise.
I've probably had it over the years, all these restaurant meals here in Quebec. I mean, I've probably had lobster and blueberries. There's just put two things together. There was always some kind of little rhubarb chutney or some kind of little rhubarb thingamajig on the plate. But some people are obsessed. And people are always saying to me, "Oh, are you getting tons of rhubarb these days?" No, because it's not local yet. I've got a rhubarb plant in my backyard. I've got 2 inches of rhubarb. I mean, do you have rhubarb at the farm?
Yeah, a lot.
Is it what kind and is there what kind of shape is it in?
I don't know. It's probably a foot long now.
Already, right. And do you feed it to the chickens?
Well, no, the chickens they peck around at it all day. They don't eat it. I guess they think it's poisonous. But the chickens are always putzing around under the rhubarb leaves as it gets bigger. They protect themselves from the shade. there. And I guess I don't eat the rhubarb because the chickens are always all about it, right? They don't destroy it or anything, but they're always pooping. I was pooping around it.
But I have another question about an ingredient that I always associated with spring in Quebec, and I wonder how many other people eat them. They're these tiny kind of little roots called crones. Cone, are they called Chinese artichokes? You know, they
Yeah.
look like maggots. Okay, now that was a big thing in cooking for a long time.
Yeah, because it was a weird looking vegetable.
It was, isn't it a kind of spring vegetable?
Well, it's in the mint family, first of all.
Ooh.
Yeah. So when you grow Chinese artichokes, your area that you're growing them basically looks like a big mint patch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So then, yeah, you pull them out in the fall, and I'd say each little kind of mint sprig of like 4 to 6 little tubers of these Chinese artichokes. So you have to kind of grow quite a lot to get a good volume, and they're cool looking.
They were a big thing in the 90s.
Yeah, sure. Charlie Trotter.
I heard that like chefs at any kind of commis in a restaurant said the worst thing was peeling those things. Like that was the worst because they're tiny. Just for people to know, they do look like a little maggot, like a little top, you know, like a little.
Yeah, they're a weird looking little vegetable. I never like cooked them that much. Like I think I'd throw them with the fish if we had any, and I don't think I'd really peel them. I think I'd rub them in rock salt and somewhat right to kind of scrub them, and then I'd simmer them like in a blanc de cuisson, like a how do you say that in English? Blanc de cuisson with a little bit of flour and milk in it, like a blonde, like the same kind of process you would to cook, let's say, endives, a blanc, right? But they never like I never went, oh wow, this is so amazing. Can I have more? Right? There's a lot of that, like that's like
It's like garnishy stuff, right? It's like those Cape gooseberries that
my
everybody.
cooking was never that. Like I liked it. Like I'd want to know what those ingredients were and taste them kind of once, but I was never for me. It was those gimmicks. I felt like and I just heard my chefs, telling me don't fall for gimmicks.
I have another question for you about mushrooms. Okay, because we're coming up on. I mean, when do mushrooms start here? Like as soon as
Well, the
morel.
first mushroom is morels.
Mm. Now, what about a gyromitre?
Don't eat them.
Yeah, what are they called in?
Yeah, well, and I feel bad because I've eaten so many, right? And
I
then
have heard stories about those mushrooms. What are they called in English for people to know? I know they're
snow morels.
snow morels. Okay.
They're one of the greatest mushrooms ever. And I worked in restaurants where we'd have to boil them first, right? We'd boil them in water, which didn't take anything away from them. They still looked like slippery and gooey. It's like a morel kind of looking, but it's a lot gooier and more slippery and more frail, right? But they can take a hard boil, and then you can put them away in a dish and for mise en place and leave them in the fridge. And then what's the great snow morel dish? But fresh green peas, snow morel, asparagus points, little slivers of lobster, a little bit of butter, top notch.
Right. And then you die if you. Okay, so I've heard a lot about these mushrooms because back in the day, actually, it was our good friend Nicolas Jongleur who told me he would serve them just sauteed and he wouldn't boil them first. And William Frachot, who is a chef now with 2 Michelin stars in Dijon, he told me that they ate plates and plates of these mushrooms that they would just saute and they were so good and they loved them so much and they never knew they were poison.
I worked for Nicholas. I did that for Nicholas, and I fought with Nicholas about it. But Nicholas is the chef, and I did what he said. And so this is my my minimal understanding of this, right? So I guess there's a chemical in snow morels that will stay in you,
Yes,
from what I understand,
stays in your liver.
but it won't affect you till later. And it has to get to an amount. So let's say the number is 10 milliliters. But every time you feed on snow morels, you get zero point 0.1 milliliters. So you basically have a life expectancy of like maybe 20 feeds. And it could be your 21st feed that will put you in a coffin, right?
I've heard you can have one glass of wine and drop dead after that moment that you hit the certain amount of toxicity in your liver with these morels. You feeling? Do you think about it at night when you're going to bed? Are you thinking, Jesus Christ, I better not eat one more of those things?
When I think of like delicious mushrooms that I've ate in my life, that's one of them.
Yeah.
My all-time favorite mushroom is morels.
First of all, the morels we get in Quebec, good. And secondly, because I've had some kind of not so flavorful morels. Secondly, I was in Burgundy last year and I went to the market in Beaune, and the man selling morels told me they all came from Chile.
Yeah. So okay. So there's a bunch of different kinds of morels, but we specifically get two of them: a blonde one and then a brown one, right? The Chinese in their infinite genius have figured out how to raise them now. So we're going to start seeing those in the market. It's a different morel again, in my opinion, the best morel that you can buy, okay, will be the morels that come from forest fire areas in British Columbia, Alberta, and those places, right? So wherever there was forest fires, and they happen every year there, morels come back in those areas. Morels love.
The soil's acidic, or is it
I believe it's acidic. I also believe it might be easier for the foragers to find morels in those environments as opposed to a dense forest. We'll say in the business, fire morels, basically, right? And when you get the boxes in, if you buy like 3 or 4 cases of them, they'll definitely have a forest after fire smell to them, right? Which, when sauteing in butter, is quite nice.
Right. No, it's a little smoky.
Dried morels are delicious as well. It's one of the greatest. Porcini is great mushroom, but dried porcini is good, but it has nothing to do with porcini mushroom. It's 2 products. It's one mushroom that makes 2 products: a fresh product and a dried product for another application, like risotto or sauce or soup. Whereas a fresh morel is delicious, sauteed in butter, but a rehydrated morel is delicious, sauteed in butter.
Is it better?
I would say I'm partial to both. They're not one is better. They're both really good. What I also like is when you buy morels, let's say at the grocery store, blah, 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 sorry, at Gatineau Market, wherever, when you find little bags of tiny ones, that's the best.
Really? I've avoided those for years. I did not know.
Oh, no, mini morels, tons of them. You do mini morels with snails, mini morels on toast with cheese. Oh, mini morels on fish, mini morels. Oh,
all those
the best
Jura dishes, the vin jaune with the morels and the.
If you look in the Joe Beef book too, Surviving the Apocalypse, there's actually a picture there of my girlfriend Andy, and she's holding one of the biggest morels I've ever seen. There was, once in a while we'd get giant morels. When I talk about a giant morel, like big, like a 750 ml bottle of water.
Oh, right.
Right. Like a wine bottle.
Were they from Montreal? Right? Where were they from? From Quebec? Where were they?
No, they'd be from BC. There's
Ontario.
I've never.
Too, right? Ontario has a lot of morels.
Yeah. And forest fires. I've never been able to access a commercial amount of Quebec morels. When I say commercial amount, like 10 kilos.
Enough for a restaurant.
Right. I've bought morels from pickers that show up at the back door of the restaurant, but like 8, and 20 or 10 pounds of this, and but never anything substantial. Whereas BC, when it gets going, you can order a skid of morels fresh, and those giant morels are amazing because what's more luxurious than stuffing a whole morel with basically the meat of 2 chicken legs, sauteed in shallots, blended, or hand cut like a terrine with a bit of bacon and lard and mustard and cream, and then stuffed into the morel. And then you baste that morel in your little pot with butter, and you pop it into the oven with a lid on it. And you put it on an oval plate and slice a big morel for 2 people with chicken in it. Come on. It's the top. That's the top of cooking.
Wow. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Did you serve that at Joe Beef?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Many times. I've been lucky to serve stuffed morels on several occasions. At Souk Harbor House was kind of I've served them at Le Caveau when I was younger. But it's just not something, You can go 5 years and not see any giant morels. And then 1 year, you can kind of get them 3 weeks in a row, you can get giant morels. But it's not an all the time thing. And it can be in a career, it can be like every 3 or 4 years, you'll get like access to doing that. And for me, I don't know, there's nothing more top.
Hmm.
Like lobster stuffed morel, and even a little bit of chicken puree and, chopped chicken with sauteed shallots and tarragon. And, God, a lobster stuffed morel. It just gives me goosebumps to be able to eat that or serve that. What bourgeoisie? What? It just doesn't get better, than things like that.
Yeah, you don't need, sorry, no offense, but you don't need Noma food when you can just have something like that. It's something so pure and perfect. Just something
Yeah,
stuff morale, although maybe,
that's why I look at the lobster so much that way, right? Because the lobster. How can I say? It's don't put lemon juice on your lobster and don't just boil it in water. Like take special care of like making a lobster properly. Uh, you know, par cook it, cut it, separate the good pieces, take your time and get the meat out of the elbows, get yourself some good lobster scissors, uh, prepare it in your best china dish, use good butter to make the sauce. If you're gonna invest in a lobster, go and try and get some fresh green peas, some asparagus tips, those little morels if possible, rampant lobsters, great. And make a little lobster stew, you know, just pieces of lobster with the best primeur vegetables of this early season. It's nuts. It's
mm.
mad luxury, right?
I can't even think of any restaurant where I could get that this week in Montreal, but I mean,
No,
maybe some
no.
people will listen and make that. But spring cooking, it's funny because here we don't get a lot of ingredients, but when you're talking about it now, I realize pretty soon a lot of things will be coming up.
Oh, it's going fast. We have radicchios just came up in the garden perennially, I guess. Bizarre. And there's a whole bunch of different things. It's going to go fast right now. In 2 weeks, you'll start seeing a lot of different things.
Any other mushrooms coming up?
I really, honestly, mushrooms is morels at the beginning of the season, and then it shuts down because everything else is after that, right? You'll see chanterelles and then porcini and all the other mushrooms. But no, morel is. I could be wrong because there's some nerd listening who's going to text me that I'm wrong. But no, from my experience and all my experience, morel is the only spring mushroom.
Mm. And don't eat the gyromites if anybody's eating the gyromites. And also if you want to forage morels, it's pretty easy because they have such a look. They don't really look like much else, do they?
Your best luck, I'll say this, the best luck you're going to have on morels is going to be in the 5-inch to 8-inch grass along the side of a country road near a forest that has a lot of pine trees in it. But not in the forest, not in the road, but in the grass on the side of the road. But again, ridiculously hard mushroom to find.
Hmm.
Like as opposed to like, I know at any given moment here in the townships, when the season starts, of course, like June, July, late June, early July, or mid July, I can always leave my house for 30 minutes and bring home chanterelles or pied de mouton. What do you say that in English? Sheep's mane, whatever. Hedgehog mushrooms, or I can find like weird boletus that aren't great, but like slippery jack boletus and other things like that. I can always go into the forest and find those things pretty quickly. But morels is not something that, unless you're that guy Theo from Tuck Shop.
Oh, right. He's got some.
He's a fanatic.
Yes, yes, yes. He's got some.
He's found like he's so good at it. He's got all these secret spots.
Excellent chef. Excellent.
Yeah,
restaurant.
fantastic.
Tuck Shop.
Yeah.
People looking for a restaurant in Montreal. Tuck Shop.
He's the only guy in Quebec that I ever see have any luck with morels, and he's got his spots, and
I think
he's
Claude Pelche
deep into
also
it.
is a little bit of a mushroom person. I'm gonna have to find
Yeah,
out.
but nobody knows Claude. Claude Peltier is like a ghost.
He is like a
He
ghost.
might as well not exist.
Yeah, well, that's
One of
why
the
you don't
greatest
know.
chefs in Quebec history.
Right, right. Well, that's also because he doesn't divulge his mushroom spots. I think.
Doesn't give interviews.
No,
Doesn't like Claude doesn't exist.
yeah,
He's the best.
yeah. He is. He is. He is. Yeah. Well, so actually, it turns out the spring is a great season for cooking. And then
Oh
the
yeah, it's
strawberries show
great.
up eventually, and then it's summer. It's kind of like the beginning of summer stuff is strawberries.
The eggs too, I feel at least here on the farm and my neighbor's farm, we notice that like, the chickens kind of spend a little bit of like solitary alone winter time in the hen houses. When you let the chickens out in the spring, when the weather starts getting good, your chickens are pretty rugged because they've been inside since like December 15th, you know, to April 5th kind of thing. So when you let your chickens out, they kind of like shed their gross feathers and they kind of look rugged and dirty and like they've been in jail for 6 months or 5 months. And now the chickens are look really beautiful. They're all fluffy again.
They're happy.
They look clean.
Are they laying more?
They're laying more because they're getting outside and they're basically eating fresh grass. They're getting all the new bugs. They're picking, they're cleaning all my perennial hedges. They're always pecking around the barn wherever any worms might be or things like that. So they're getting their good food on, right? They're getting their greens. They're drinking out of puddles. They're eating fresh green growth. They're eating a lot of the bugs, the new bugs. So yeah, I noticed right away last week that the eggs were like top.
Do you have duck eggs? Do you have ducks? You have ducks, so do you also get ducks?
I had ducks. I got rid of all my ducks in the fall.
When you say got rid
Uh,
of, what are you saying? You slaughtered them or you gave them away to?
yeah, we slaughtered a bunch and then we sent some because what happens here in the country, well, inbreeding happens, not in humans, but there's two people that raise Muscovy ducks not far from me, but they're always kind of regenerating the same incest ducks for like 15 years, right? They just look rugged and a bit like cross-eyed and not bright when that happens. And yeah, they do have some kind of issues, but I don't talk to the farmers about it. So I make efforts about, I got birds from far away from here. So when people noticed that my birds were from 4 hours away from here, all of a sudden there was interest in my birds in the fall. My neighbors were like, hey, that would be really cool if you didn't kill all your ducks and we could have like 10 or 15 of your ducks to rebuild our populations with your different ducks. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I basically I gave 20 ducks away, 10 to two farms, and now my ducks are breeding with other ducks to make new ducks. But I don't want ducks on my property anymore. They're terrible little animals.
Like what?
They poop everywhere. They're sexually aggressive.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I don't know if you've ever seen ducks having mating,
No.
but it's something else. They have corkscrew penises.
Oh,
But I wasn't even aware of this because if Google when you Google that you're gonna have ducks and you're gonna be a duck farmer,
if I Google duck penis, yes.
Google doesn't tell you that they have corkscrew penises and they're super rapey,
Ooh,
right? They stick their bills in the ground, right, as an anchor to mount the female duck,
wow.
and it lasts like enough time to make my children cry.
Oh,
My daughters are like,
I
Daddy,
shouldn't be
that
laughing.
duck is killing the other duck.
Not
And what's
killing,
that thing
sweetheart.
hanging out of him? And I'm like, oh God, what is that thing hanging out of him? And then I have to Google it, and it's a corkscrew penis.
God.
Yeah. And then the amount of food that they eat is just like nuts.
Well, you had me at the corkscrew penis. I mean, I don't know if I'd go beyond that and the raping going on at the farm there. Ah.
Yeah. So the chickens are much more noble as lovers. The roosters are quite tender, gentle lovers.
Right, right, right. What about, but did you get any eggs from the ducks?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What were they good? Did you use them? Can you? I always wonder if you can make a meringue with the egg. I think you can.
Probably better for cooking and maybe noodle making, and stuff like that. Uh as like I'm a scrambled eggs guy,
Mm.
and I was just like, I'm not into this.
Oh, they don't taste good?
They taste good. They just taste maybe too it's too good. I don't know. I
Maybe
guess
they're
there's a reason that
traumatized by the mating, so that the eggs just didn't taste good to you anymore.
I just felt they were big and they're heavy and they're oilier. And they were just like, whereas my Bresson chicken eggs I really like.
You don't have guinea hen? Guinea hen apparently are very good to keep because they eat all the ticks, but they're incredibly stupid.
Have you seen a guinea hen?
Yes, they're scary. They have tiny heads and they're very
They're
homely.
weird.
They're very weird, but they eat all the ticks.
Yeah, but they're incredibly nuts. Like they scream and yell all night, and it's not. Like,
I heard there's the Morgan Farm, this place called the Morgan Farm up in the Laurentians. And the guy who raises the guinea hens told me that one day a raccoon came close to the pen and the guinea hens got so scared that they all ran into the corner and they trampled each other and half of them got smothered. He said they're that stupid.
yeah, they're pretty dumb. I've heard of like, yeah, coyotes just ripping them to shreds and they won't even run away and stuff like
But
that.
guinea hen's delicious, so
I just can't.
you don't want.
I'll kill a rooster if it crows too much. No, but for real, like it's like you can crow in the morning,
Oh
okay?
God.
No, but you're allowed to crow in the morning,
Like then after
and
that,
that's it.
forget it, or you're gonna get decapitated. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to come back as a rooster at your farm. I'll tell you, it's like yeah. Well, imagine yeah. Anyway, and no quail, nothing else. What about geese?
No, no, I don't want to raise any animals. I've the vineyard is work, and Pigeon Hill just got pigs. They're really nice. They're called red wattle pigs. I went to visit them yesterday. Pigeon Hill Winery, Pigeon Hill Vineyard. The Schufeld family have a vineyard right near me. They've pioneering organic viticulture family that makes amazing wine from hybrids. I'm a huge fan, and they're friends, and like they're my best buddies in the area. And they got some red wattle pigs. They also raise sheep and have sheep in their vineyard to weed things out, and they make really delicious lamb once or twice a year. So they're the full package. But these red wattle pigs are on the endangered pig list.
All right, there must be many pigs on that list.
Yeah, there is. Derek Damon, who I was talking about before, he got pigs this week. He got Kune pigs, Kune. It's a New Zealand pig that's non-rutting. It's a herbivore. Um,
Non-rutting, meaning
some pigs just love digging big holes in your yard and lying in their own filth and mud. And when you make a pig pen, they will just basically make it look like a bomb crater uh, pretty quickly, right? So they're rutting pigs. They're basically just shredding the earth, digging roots out, rocks, you name it. They'll quickly take a quarter acre of your property and make it look like the moon really quickly.
they don't all do it naturally. They don't all rud
No, different breeds do different things,
like dogs, I
right?
guess.
I don't pretend not to know much about pigs, but Kune pig is a pig that I was reading about, even 2 years ago, because in viticulture, one of our biggest back-breaking jobs that we do is clearing the weed growth under the vines in the vineyard rows, right? So we have machines that do that. We do it by hand. What the machines can't do, it's called piocher, la pioche. But in New Zealand, where this pig is from, the Kune, some vineyards have had great success releasing pigs into the vineyards to graze all the weeds underneath the vines. And they do quite a great job. And that's cool when you can farm that way. Organic grapes with pigs in the vineyard to do your weeding is kind of neat, right?
And they're pooping, thus providing fertilizer.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like all a big kind of part of the permaculture situation that you want to work towards. But again, it's all work, having many pigs for your vineyard, and that requires another barn, and that's more money. And then, you know, uh,
And you don't want pigs.
no, I'm good. I'm good with my chickens. I got my favorite chicken, Brownie. That's a Barnvelder. I didn't know what that was, but I have this one chicken, Brownie. She's a big, gorgeous hen. She's super nice. And I've not felt this way. I've had a lot of chickens over the last few years, but this chicken is,
The love of your life.
I love her so much. I could just like sit out on the porch and look at her. She's so majestic. She looks like she's out of like an old British agricultural drawing, where the animals kind of look weird. You ever notice the old British paintings of cows and pigs are strange? So Brownie is a big brown, like a chocolate brown hen. And she's got this huge butt and very feathery. And she looks misshapen. It kind of looks like a basketball with a head. And she's just gorgeous.
And you love her. Are you going to slaughter her eventually?
Never. I'll slaughter every chicken, but I'm not slaughter her.
Is the feeling mutual? Do you think that she loves you?
I think so.
She look at you. Do you pat the chicken? Can you pat it? Like, I know you're allergic to a lot
pat?
Well, like, do like
hold it?
Yeah. Well, like, do you pat it, the dog?
For sure. Not all of them. The French chickens, like the French, the Bressan chickens.
Annoying. They're always complaining.
They're so annoying. They have attitudes. They think they're cool, right? I'm telling you, it's weird. Like, it's so weird because like, just let me tell you this: the breast chickens, okay, have a red crest, a white body, and blue feet.
Yes.
What else is red, white, and blue? The French
flag. Yes.
Yeah. So, it's like le poulet de Bresse, c'est le meilleur. It's the best. They're dicks. I'm telling you, they have attitude, and they're very French. You'd notice if you came for one glass of wine in the yard, and if you're just looking at the chickens, you're like, those ones think they're better than the others.
It's funny you say that because French poodles, I have a husky, and I ran into those French poodles, the ones that people cut all fancy. And those dogs were looking down on my dog. Like, the French poodles are like, they poodle attitude. So I agree. I'm sure you're right about the chickens because I've seen it in the canine world. What you spotted in the poultry world.
I think Brownie's a German chicken. It's a Barnvelder. And I don't know much about Barnvelder, but I know that I got 6 Barnvelder chicks and 5 of them died. And I was kind of shattered about that. And one survived, and that's Brownie. Yeah. People are just like, delete this podcast forever. This guy, what's wrong? What's wrong with this loser and his chicken talk?
That's our show this week. Please don't forget to subscribe to the Salt Lake Podcast with David McMillan and me, Lesley Chesterman, on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at saltlakepodcast@gmail.com. And while you're there on the Spotify platform or on any of these platforms, please give us 5 stars to encourage us, but also to help people find the podcast. Every little bit helps, especially at the beginning as we get this project off the ground.
Special thanks to our producers at TNKR Media. We'll see you next time on the Salt Lake Podcast with Lesley Chesterman and David McMillan.
Think Babe. TNKR Media. Good talk.